Good morning. I'm Chandra Pasma, MPP for Ottawa West Nepean, and I'm joined this morning by Graham Webb, Executive Director for the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly, along with my colleagues Jessica Bell, MPP for University Rosedale and the NDP's Housing Critic, and Lise Beaujois, MPP for Thunder Bay Superior North and the NDP's Seniors Critic. We're here this morning because the government has failed to take action to crack down on the exploitation of vulnerable seniors in care homes and retirement homes. Currently, some homes are increasing service fees to get around limits on rent under the Residential Tenancies Act. They are also failing to respect the fact that seniors in retirement homes are tenants, and they have all the rights of tenants. That's why today the NDP is tabling a bill to crack down on price gouging of seniors by retirement homes and protect them against unfair evictions. The Protecting Seniors' Rights in Care Homes Act will, if passed, regulate retirement home fees so that rates are tied to the specific services provided, with increases limited to once per year, pegged to the Consumer Price Index. It will also provide clear guidelines for the use of marketing discounts, which are used to entice seniors to sign agreements and move in without knowing the actual rates that they will be charged for their housing when the discount ends, or even without knowing that they've been charged a temporary discount rather than a permanent rate. Finally, the bill entitles residents to 3 months' rent in compensation for eviction and requires care homes to issue eviction notices under the Residential Tenancies Act in cases of closure or conversion. These protections are sorely needed. In my riding of Ottawa West Nepean, Alavida Lifestyles, which operates 2 retirement residences, Park Place and Ravines, has increased fees by thousands of dollars in a single year. Residents have faced increases that range from $6,000 a year to more than $30,000. I don't think that there's any of us here who could afford an increase in our housing costs in 1 year like that, let alone a senior on a fixed income. Alavida has also engaged in high-pressure tactics to get seniors to sign agreements to pay these extra fees. Seniors have told me they can't eat or sleep because of the stress of the situation. More than 24 seniors have moved out of these residences since the spring, losing their home, their community, and their friends. But some of them feel like they are caught with no choice but to pay the higher fees, with a spouse in assisted living or no one to help them move. While this situation is awful, it is perfectly legal. Retirement homes can legally increase fees by as much as they want and as many times as they want, as long as they provide 90 days written notice. This is completely unacceptable. The government knows this is happening. I've raised it in the House, but they have refused to act. That's why we are taking action today, where the government won't, and introducing this bill. I urge all members of the House who care about our seniors, regardless of party, to support this bill.
We are here today to announce that we're tabling a bill today to protect our vulnerable seniors against the exploitation and abuse of unfair fees in retirement homes. Presently, a retirement home can ask whatever it wants as soon as they give a written notice of 90 days before increasing the fees. In consequence, there are 2 retirement homes at Ottawa West Nepean that will increase the fees by thousands of dollars, more than $30,000 in some cases, and it's completely legal. We must end this practice, and since the government does not want to act, it's up to us to do it. We invite all members that who care for seniors to join us. Ishbasa Graham West.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Graham Webb. I'm the Executive Director of the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly, where we have been working on these very issues for decades. The Advocacy Centre for the Elderly supports this bill because retirement home tenants need protection from exorbitant increases in the cost of rent and for meals and care services. Part of this is a very old problem. Retirement home tenants, like all other tenants in Ontario, have long had rent control protection, where rent could only be increased by an annual amount up to a certain guideline. However, the cost of meals and care services have never had the similar protection. We have handled many cases that were constructive evictions, where retirement home tenants had the cost of their meals and care services increased by almost unimaginable amounts to levels they could not afford and had to leave their resident because they could not afford these unregulated cost increases. Now, coming out of the pandemic, we've seen an insidious new twist on the old play. Retirement homes recently have lured older adults to take up residence, signing a contract for one amount, but offering a discount on the rent in a much lower amount without any terms. We've seen recently that retirement home landlords have terminated the discounts, causing excessive, sudden increases in the cost of rent that again have caused constructive evictions. We can't tolerate this. Our clients can't bear it, and we need change in Ontario to protect against this wrong.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Graham Webb. Thank you to MPP Chandra Pasma for reintroducing this bill, as well as Lise Bourgeois for being here and supporting seniors in your riding. This bill was originally developed in response to a mass eviction of 270 residents in my riding. It was from Davenhill Retirement Home near Yonge and Bloor. These were elderly residents. Many of them had chronic health conditions. They were coerced and pressured by the owner of the building to move out of their retirement homes. They were terrified. They were angry. They were very overwhelmed. Most of them were eligible for 3 months of compensation, but they didn't know their rights and they were coerced into signing away the eligibility piece. And many of them moved into retirement homes that were far more expensive than the one that they were living in Davenhill. And in response to that, we wrote this bill because it was very clear that retirement home residents don't have the rights and the protections that they deserve. This isn't a one-off case. We have seen this year where over 200 residents at a retirement home owned by Chartwell in Mississauga were being mass evicted. We have seen in the case of Ottawa where residents are being charged astronomical amounts for care services like medication and food because that section of their care is not protected in the same way as their rent. It is very concerning. We have a responsibility as a province to protect retirement home residents from predatory behaviour, price gouging and coercive evictions. This bill closes the loopholes that allow retirement home residents to be ripped off or evicted. Specifically, it regulates retirement home fees so that the costs of providing services like medication and food are tied to the service, and increases are limited to once per year, and it's pegged to the consumer price index, similar to rent control. Our bill also tightens the rules around evictions so that residents are entitled to 3 months of compensation for eviction, and it requires care homes to issue eviction notices under the Residential Tenancies Act in case of closure or conversion. Retirement home residents are renters too, and they should have the same rights as every other renter. Thank you. I'm pleased to be co-sponsoring this bill. I'd like to introduce Lise Bourgeois from Thunder Bay Superior North, the MPP.
Thank you very much. My name is Lise Bourgeois. I'm the MPP for Thunder Bay Superior North, and I'm also the official opposition critic for seniors. And I want to really start by thanking MPP Chandra Pasma and MPP Jessica Bell for your really important work on this bill. And the purpose of the bill is really to address the lack of regulation over rent and fee increases in seniors' care homes and residences, and the distressing number of evictions taking place of entire buildings where seniors have been living. As seniors critic, I have heard some appalling stories about significant fee increases and evictions, but I've also had personal experience with this issue. Family member had to move out of a retirement home because the rent and fees had gone up 15% over 2 years. The rent was high to begin with, or the cost, I should say, of living there was high to begin with, and the possibility that these costs could continue to increase at this rate really priced our relative out of this home. Another example, Trillium Care in Norwich first tried to increase costs by 161% and then gave tenants 2 weeks to move out after the home's sudden decision to shut down. Where was their entitlement to the Residential Tenancies Act? Nowhere to be seen. Certainly the increase was astronomical. Nobody could possibly pay such an increase and still be able to live where they were living. Given that so many seniors are being rent-evicted from their homes in seniors complexes, the case of 200 seniors evicted from Heritage Glen in Mississauga is one case, and the refusal of this government to impose rent control on buildings built after 2018 has left the reality that if somebody gets priced out of their current residence, there may not be anywhere else to go that is affordable or appropriate. And then I think about the stress of somebody watching their savings deplete, worrying that their money will run out, so they better plan on dying before it does. This is a conversation we've had in our family because seniors are on fixed incomes. What is in their savings is what they've got. And when that's gone, it's gone. Our elders deserve so much better. This bill is a really important step in giving seniors living in congregate settings predictable living expenses, and if the worst happens and their home is sold out from under them, compensation and the requirement for owners to operate according to the Residential Tenancies Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lise, and we'll take your questions.
First, could you just talk a bit more about what you mean when you say that the cost of services would be tied to the service? What does that mean?
So right now, there's no requirement that the cost of the service be in any way tied to the specific service. So we have packages, for instance, like you're receiving something called the Silver Package, and it includes housekeeping, a personal support worker, 3 meals, delivery of medication, perhaps a glass of wine at one of those meals every day. You don't know what the actual cost breakdown of those services is, and they can increase the cost of one of those services with no reference to what the cost of providing that service is, and you have no idea where that cost increase is or how they came about with that number that they're increasing the cost.
And for seniors, I mean, talking about like them being renters, but they don't have rights under the Residential Tenancies Act. So does the Landlord and Tenant Board deal with retirement home issues?
They do, because the rent portion falls under the Residential Tenancies Act guidelines on rent increases. But although retirement homes are regulated under the Residential Tenancies Act and the residents are tenants, the fee portion is completely unregulated except for that requirement to provide 90 days notice.
Okay. And have you brought this bill to the legislature before?
Yes, MPP Bell brought a previous iteration, so we have updated the bill to address some of the situations that we're now seeing arise, like the use of marketing discounts to lure seniors in, and then increasing the rates at some point by telling them that amount that you were paying was never intended to be permanent. That's what allowed Alavida in my riding to increase fees by more than $30,000 in a single year for some people, just telling them that rate you were paying, we never intended to keep charging you that rate.
And when people are getting rent evicted, I guess it's case by case, but is there, like, are they being rent evicted so they're making it into a more expensive retirement home, or they're making it into a condo for people who aren't retirement age yet, or is there a common theme that we're seeing?
I'm going to let our housing critic answer that question.
Graham, you probably know this too. Overwhelmingly, we're seeing retirement homes being converted into condos. That's what's happening. It's what happened in Davenhill. They wanted to sell it off and convert it into a condo, and it's what's happening in Mississauga as well. And the problem is that there are, despite what the government is doing, there's a limited number of places that elderly people can go and live with dignity. We are also seeing long-term care homes being closed down, especially in downtown Toronto, and being converted to condos. It's a trend that needs to be addressed. Providing stability and protections to retirement home residents will go some way towards ensuring they've got, some protection from their, landlord if they're looking at doing some kind of conversion.
The fundamental problem is that there's a housing crisis in Ontario. This affects older adults, particularly who are on fixed incomes. Older adults really have nowhere to go that's within their means. They often end up in shelter, or they end up in the healthcare system in long-term care homes prematurely because they simply don't have other accommodation. In many communities, especially in rural Ontario, there have been multiple closures of congregate living facilities and seniors apartment buildings, leaving homeless seniors without transportation, without family support, without anywhere to live in the communities they've lived for, if not all their life, then 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
That's my last, question for up here. I wanted to ask also more a follow-up question, but since I'm the only one here, can you guys connect us with anybody who is being impacted by this or the children of anybody?
Oh, absolutely. I have multiple constituents that I've been working with. One of them was hoping to be here today, but something happened, so she wasn't able to come from Ottawa to be here. But yeah, we certainly do. I'm sure that Lise and Jessica in their work with seniors who've been evicted, that they also have people you could speak with.
Okay, great. That would be great. That's all my questions for you guys now. But I don't know, should I connect with the media team about that? Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Graham.